point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 601st edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Nancy Wolf, who, again, is not here. My hope is that she will show up next time. She's been very busy of late. This show is ostensibly being recorded on the 28th of November, but of course that's Thanksgiving, so I'm recording a day early. I always finish the show with Wednesday news, so it was possible to put it together this morning and actually do the show this afternoon. That said, this show starts on the 21st of November, ends on the 27th of November, and it consists of an aggregation of articles that appeared in various places over the course of the week. It happens that each day I chose 3 articles to represent that day. The articles appeared at geoharvey.com, which is my blog, which has about 15 articles up every day. The description of the show, which is for most people going to be down on the screen, has a URL for a website called tinyurl, and if you go to that website, it will give you the breakdown of the show that I have listed for the week, so that you get a single entry of 21 articles that are scheduled to appear this week. So I will get straight into it as quick as I can. And here we are with fish at an offshore foundation. This particular foundation, by the way, when I saw this, I thought that can't be a wind foundation. And then I thought, well, maybe it's a site that is one of those utility sites that is used at wind farms. But in fact, this particular one, I believe, and I could be wrong, is at an offshore foundation for a petroleum site. Anyway, this article is from Renews, and the title is Crown Estate Launches Research Projects. The Crown Estate is partnering with a range of expert bodies across the UK on 5 new projects to support the acceleration toward net zero, while enabling marine and coastal ecosystems to thrive. The projects will aim to discover any negative effects of offshore wind farms and how to remedy them. Now, you would think, of course, that with the number of offshore wind turbines that have been put in, the investigation of this kind would have been done several times already. But it hasn't been, and they want to find out, are they actually causing trouble for fish, for whales, for other marine mammals, and so forth, and they just don't know the answer. They can kind of imagine the answer. They can guess that fish are not really affected much by wind projects. Wind turbines do make sound. The sound is not horrible. Tom Fennell and I went to a wind farm together and took readings of sound on his cell phone. He had an app for the cell phone that measured sound, and we stood very close to a wind turbine and measured the sound of the turbine, of each other, of a person talking. It turned out that the loudest sound around was that person talking. And that was close to the person, but it wasn't holding the meter up to his mouth. It also was at some distance from the wind farm, but when we were halfway between the wind farm and the road, we found that trucks going by were much louder than the wind farm. That's just a matter of, so you know. I've talked to a lot of people who, nobody in Vermont, because people in Vermont don't live in wind farms, but in other parts of the United States, people live in wind farms. And I've talked to a number of people who live in wind farms, and nobody said that they found it in any way disturbing. They didn't know anybody who found it disturbing. In fact, one woman said, "Where are you calling from?" And I said, "Vermont." She said, "Oh, well, people in Vermont have problems with wind turbines, but we don't." That was from a community that was in a wind farm. And if you got up in a steeple and looked around, I was told you'd see wind turbines in every direction, not very far away. Okay, next up is a description of the Colorado River. This particular article is from CNN. And the title is, "Biden Administration Trying to Throw a Hail Mary to Save the Colorado River Before Trump Takes Over." The Biden administration is trying to get 7 western states to agree to divvy up the Colorado River's water so as to protect the river basin and the West's largest single water source before Donald Trump takes office. One of the things that came up this week was the world is actually, the crust of the earth is actually tipping because there is so much water being pumped out from the ground in various places. And the location of the North Pole on the crust of the earth has moved something over 30 inches. The problem with the Colorado River is it supplies water to 7 states, and it is a huge water resource. And those states have to have the water resource divided in such a way that they all have some access to the water, which is used for all kinds of things, from drinking water to industrial processes to powering hydroelectric systems and so forth. So this is a huge problem because it's just a very important resource, the resource of the water. Okay, we have another article coming up from CNN. This picture is just a picture of a rainstorm. It is not a picture of an atmospheric river. I don't know that an atmospheric river would actually look any different. An atmospheric river is a band, a fairly narrow band of very intensely humid air that moves onshore. Excuse me. It's a band of very intensely humid air that moves onshore in a long ribbon-like stream, and it is called an atmospheric river. And that was met by a bomb cyclone last week, a week ago. And the title of this article is "At Least One Dead and Hundreds of Thousands Without Power as Bomb Cyclone Slams Washington State and British Columbia." A once-in-a-decade bomb cyclone lashed the West Coast with hurricane-force wind gusts, leaving at least 1 person dead and hundreds of thousands without power in Washington State, California, and British Columbia. Now, the bomb cyclone is, I think, no longer there. I think it's used up its energy. The atmospheric river is still coming ashore. The reservoirs in California that had been low are getting filled up rapidly. After a week, the atmospheric river is still dumping on California at any rate. And we will see how that's going to develop. I don't know. But it did get worse. The whole thing got worse from this point. There's been more than one person killed. And the situation on the West Coast is not exactly good. I suppose I should go on. We are up to Friday, November 22nd, and we have a picture of Java. This article is from ABC News. That's American Broadcast Company, Corporation. I don't remember which it is. The title is Indonesia's Prabowo plans to retire all fossil fuel plants in 15 years, but experts are skeptical. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto stated that his government plans to retire all fossil fuel-powered plants while drastically boosting the country's renewable energy capacity in the next 15 years. But the country is one of the most dependent on coal. And this is not a joke. Indonesia has, first of all, Indonesia, you might think it's just a bunch of islands. How big is the population? The population is very big. It's very dense. And the amount of coal that it uses is just incredibly big. And in fact, it wasn't just coal, it was coal and oil. The whole reason why the Japanese attacked the Philippines at the beginning of the Second World War was because they needed a clear path to get to Indonesia. And the reason they wanted to get to Indonesia was so they could get the oil in particular, but also the coal from Indonesia. They wanted to take the fossil fuels. This was a very important issue for the Japanese. And as a matter of fact, when the war went on to a point where the Philippines were taken over again, Indonesia was still largely, almost all, in Japanese hands, and it still had the oil, and it still had the coal, but the oil and the coal could not be moved easily to Japan. And the result of that was they had naval vessels which were in Japan and had ammunition, but no fuel. And they had naval vessels that were in Indonesia with fuel, but no ammunition. So this had a profound effect on them for the war. Today, Indonesia is still using fossil fuels, still using coal, still using oil, and they have got to a point now where they're planning on ending the use of fossil fuel for energy producing plants. Okay, the next article is, here's a picture of a giraffe. This also comes from ABC News. The title is Giraffes Need Endangered Species Protection for the First Time, U.S. officials say. The tallest animal on Earth is in danger, says the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it is calling for federal protections for giraffe species for the first time. Fish and Wildlife Service proposes listing 3 subspecies of northern giraffes as endangered due to poaching, habitat loss, and climate change. So, you might think the United States is not interested in endangered species unless they happen to exist in America. But Fish and Wildlife is interested in giraffes and the fact that they're endangered species, and they want to put protection on the giraffe species. There are things that can be done. If they do this, it will mean that, for example, the leather from a giraffe, the hide from a giraffe, will not enter the United States legally. So that's one of the things that they want to have done. I'm going to go on. The next picture is a picture of heliostats at Ivanpah. If you look at this picture and you look very carefully into the distance, just a little above the middle of the picture, there's a kind of a white spot just above the horizon. Not a spot exactly, it's more like a rectangle, but it's just above the horizon. That white rectangle is the top of a tower. And all of the things that you see the backs of, and actually what looks like a body of water in the foreground, it's a mirror though. Those things are all mirrors. They're called heliostats, and they track the sun in such a way that they shine the sunlight reflect it onto the tower, which makes the tower very hot. And that heat is trapped. Now, this is from Clean Technica. So let me read the title and the synopsis. Record levels of solar and storage installed for tech, retail, and manufacturing giants in the United States. Corporations in the U.S. are spending heavily on solar and energy storage to power their operations despite current circumstances. On that topic, the Solar Energy Industries Association just released its annual Solar Means Business report. Now, the relevance of solar and storage to this particular picture, let me put that up so you can see it more clearly. This particular picture, that tiny rectangle that looks like it's standing on end just above the middle, is a place where I think in this case it is salt, can be heated to the point where it is really hot and melts. And it can be then moved into a container where it will maintain its heat for a long time. And the result of that is that you have quite a few hours after dark when solar energy, having been stored in salt, can be used for running an energy plant. Let me put that back. The operation of this solar farm, if you want to call it that, solar project Ivanpah, which is in California, the operation of this solar farm is thermal. So that means it's got certain things in common with natural gas, coal, and nuclear, but the energy from it is all coming directly from the sun. So it is stored as thermal energy. It's not being stored in a battery or something like that. And because of that, it is not going to require any fuel aside from a small amount of fuel for moving the molten salt around. This is a technology which actually will appear again in this show. And so I will go on, but I'll just say when Ivanpah was put together a number of years ago, it was very largely considered a demonstration project or a research project, large, but it was something new, and it is more understood. There are things that have happened when the solar array was all aimed the way that they wanted to aim it. They had problems with birds dying. They discovered that they could avoid those by aiming them slightly differently and then using them only when the solar project was in use. So using them only when it was in use. Yes, that makes sense. Let's go on. The next project, the next photo is, we are up to Saturday, November 23rd. The next photo is a picture of a jack-up barge. And I noticed that this particular barge is jacked up, even though it's at a wharf or appears to be. It is next to land, but it's jacked up. And I think the reason for that is because these wind towers that are being stored on it are really massive, and there is no way they could put them on that barge without making it rock altogether too much. This article is from Renews. It is titled "Race for Bigger Turbines, quote, paralyzes," end quote, suppliers. The rat race to build ever larger turbines is paralyzing the offshore wind supply chain. And this is according to the consultancy Roland Berger. Europe has chosen offshore wind as a key pillar of its energy transition. The offshore wind sector has pledged to ramp up its capacity to 20 gigawatts per year in order to realize its goal for 2030. But the problem is they want to increase the sizes of the wind turbines. We had a report last week about wind turbines that might be as big as, well, they're being made 25 megawatts, but you know, there's a university, I think it's a University of Virginia. I might not be remembering that properly, but nevertheless, the university that was involved in this, and I think it was one American university and 3 Chinese universities, they were actually working toward 50 megawatt turbines. And a 50 megawatt turbines is huge. But in order to get to that, we have to be building larger turbines. But we also have to build what we have, the turbines of the types that we have, to get electricity. So this is kind of a balancing act. Okay, the next item comes from Clean Technica, and the title of this is a picture of battery system, and it is a type of system that's called a BESS, which is Battery Energy Storage System. The title of the article is the great grid scale battery boom comes to the U.S. The U.S. has installed 20 gigawatts of grid scale battery storage for its grids, up nearly from none just a few years ago. That is to say, a few years ago there wasn't any, and now there's 20 gigawatts, which is, in terms of the instant output of these batteries and the output they can produce over the course of a few hours, this is like 20 nuclear plants that have been installed in just a few years. The EIA, that is the Energy Information Administration, predicts total grid-scale battery storage could double again to 40 gigawatts by the end of next year. So we could have as much battery installed as we have already installed. And I don't remember when the large installations of batteries in the United States started, but it wasn't very long ago. And that is 40 gigawatts with the completion of new projects that are already in the pipeline. So this is not with new projects being added. This is with new projects that are already being developed. So this is a realistic idea that this might happen. Okay, we have an item from Clean Technica and a picture of wind turbines on a snowy landscape. The title is, Renewable Energy Investors Are Gearing Up for Another Big Year. Regardless of who occupies the White House, renewable energy will be pushing fossil fuel plants out of the picture next year and beyond. The community solar movement is one thing in play, and the old rivalry between coal producers and natural gas is starting to heat up. You know, one of the things that happened in 2016, Donald Trump was running for office, and he said pretty regularly, Trump digs coal. And he did repeat that in 2020. Not very often, but he did repeat it. I saw him say it once. But what happened to the coal industry with Donald Trump in office was shocking, considering that he digs coal. 30% of the coal miners lost their jobs. There had been the Dow Jones Coal Index, which was DJUSCL, and you could look up what the index was. It dropped something on the order of 95% under Donald Trump, and then it just vanished. So Dow Jones was no longer producing the coal index. It is, again, a different index, not DJUSCL, but it's called the Dow Jones Coal Index. But it is organized differently, and it's made of different companies. Donald Trump had an immediate personal effect, presidential effect, on the balance between coal and natural gas because he favored natural gas. And a lot of utilities took coal-burning power plants and reworked them so they would burn natural gas instead of coal. And he favored that because he wanted to be producing natural gas. The coal industry kind of went broke, and the natural gas industry was engaged in fracking, which, by the way, has continued under Joe Biden. And Donald Trump wants to continue having it grow with him in office, but it remains to be seen how that's going to develop for reasons that you will see in this broadcast. We are up to Sunday, November 24th, and we have we're starting to talk about COP29 here. This is from ABC News. The title is World Leaders Reach $300 Billion Climate Cash Deal at COP29. In a surprising turn of events, world leaders at the UN Climate Conference in Azerbaijan announced they have reached an agreement on a new deal that calls for wealthy countries, and by the way, China is one of them, to contribute $300 billion annually to help developing nations deal with the effects of climate change. I don't see how we can avoid this. I know that I expect that Donald Trump will say we shouldn't be participating in this. We shouldn't be throwing our money away. But there are a couple of reasons why we should be, not the least of which is we have contributed to the change, the climate change that is causing some countries will cause some countries to pass entirely out of existence. And not just some countries, but parts of the United States. If I put this in terms of Cameron Parish and Cameron, Louisiana, people might find it easier to understand. Cameron, Louisiana is basically on the coast. In 1970, it had a population of 3,200. It had a kind of a job boom going on because it was a place where people could get jobs to work on oil rigs. And they were pumping a lot of oil out of the ground. And in fact, the ground at Cameron, the city of Cameron, actually subsided a foot. And at the same time, the sea level rose a foot. And by the way, if you measure the sea level from a satellite, it can be measured to within about 1/8 of an inch. And that accounts for waves and the whole thing. The result of that is that Cameron, instead of being 6 feet above the ocean level, was 4 feet above the ocean level. And the result of that minor change was that it just got slammed over and over and over again by the larger hurricanes that were coming along, sometimes 2 in a couple of weeks. And the result of that is that the last information I can get on Cameron, which is 2 years old, is that the population had fallen from 3,200 to 191. So, and the houses that were there are not empty. They're gone. They're gone because they were knocked off their foundations by by bad weather. And Cameron is not the only place in the world that is suffering from that. And I was surprised to discover that Lake Charles, which is 30 miles inland, is considered to be on the Gulf from the point of view of its use as a shipping center. Anyway, one of the problems that we have is that countries are going broke, going out of business, losing all their land. And why? Largely because the United States, Europeans and Chinese and Indians and so forth have caused this. The other thing is, we are not going to be able to stop climate change unless we stop it everywhere. We cannot choose to stop climate change for the United States and have it continue for everybody else. This is not a choice that we're given. Things are different than they were in the past. So, and if you think that climate change is not happening, please think again and take it as carefully as you can. Okay, our next picture is a picture of contrails. And by the way, this is a picture of contrails. It is not, I should say almost certainly not, because maybe there's some weird way they can do it, a picture of chemtrails. I will tell you that chemtrails do exist. I can show you pictures of them. And if you look at airplanes that are flying, trailing red, white, and blue markers in formation or whatever, those are chemtrails. They are chemicals that are put into the air in order to show people that they have chemtrails. But these are contrails, and you can tell because the trails start as condensation in 4 lines behind the engines, almost behind the aircraft. The trails are invisible up until the point where the exhaust cools off to the point where the condensation happens, and then the condensation, which is steam in the air, turns into water particles, and they turn into snow, and you have, or ice, I should say, and that's way up in the air. And chemicals, by the way, cannot be dropped over Vermont and have them come down on Vermont, because they'll stay in the air for as much as a year, longer, really. This is from Clean Technica. The title of the article is Aviation Contrails, Long-Hanging Fruit of Climate Change. In a report called Contrail Avoidance, Aviation's Climate Opportunity of the Decade, Transport and Environment explained how cheap it would be to avoid 80% of the contrail damage. The report was published just before COP29. It got a follow-up with an event at the conference in Baku. Okay, contrails are being produced in far greater number today than they were 20 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a kid. They were being reported during the Second World War, and if you want to see something interesting, go online and take a look at Second World War material on contrails, and you can see stuff that is just astonishing. And also look at contrails shown from space, because I've seen contrails that start and end at London and New York. And now I don't know what direction the plane was going, but the trails go from London all the way to New York, or from New York all the way to London. And that's a lot of chemical to dump if you're going to dump chemicals in the air. By the way, I actually had a job once working in a chemical plant where I manufactured material that was used to drop out of planes to seed clouds. It was we were making this material for the U.S. Navy. I don't know why the U.S. Navy wanted to seed clouds, but they would bring ingots of silver to us, and then we would give them an amount of silver iodide that was what that silver would produce. I know a little bit about this. You would not see a picture like that seeding clouds. Why? Because it's not in clouds. You can't produce clouds by seeding blue sky. You have to produce, if you're going to seed clouds, you have to have clouds. And I know that there's a lot of, I don't want to call it misinformation because I don't know that it is. But there's a lot of talk about that, you know, the aviation contrails. And okay, I should go on. We have an article from the Louisiana Illuminator. This is Lake Charles, which I just mentioned a moment ago. The title of the article is Trump Promised to Kill Offshore Wind Energy. What will that mean for the Gulf? Well, actually, what will it mean for anybody? Trump's vow to kill offshore wind energy development, quote, on day one, end quote, of his second term is already having effects on the East Coast. The effect, by the way, being that wind development, offshore wind development is in some cases being put on hold. But the biggest wind farm proposed for the Gulf of Mexico will likely stay on track because his term will end before the development actually gets underway. We will have an article on this in a moment, and I will get to that. Okay, we're up to Monday, November 25th. We have a picture. I know that this has got solar farm in it, and I know that, let me get it. Here we go. I know that it's got a solar farm in it, and I know that it's got what looks like a coal-burning power plant. I can't imagine that it's anything else. But it's got a lot of stuff in it. And, you know, it's got what looks like circular wastewater treatment ponds and things of that nature. This is from the World Economic Forum. The title is Pakistan is Experiencing a Solar Power Boom. Here's what it can teach us. Pakistan's rapid adoption of solar energy is largely market-driven with minimal political support. As more consumers abandon the grid, the resulting decline in demand drives up fixed costs for those who stay connected to the grid, and tariffs are up 155%. Now, this is fascinating because it shows something happening that we don't hear about. What happens when demand declines and the supply stays the same? Well, typically what happens is if demand declines and supply stays the same, then the price of the item goes down in order to attract people to buy it at a lower price. But here, this is something that has happened that is the opposite. Demand has gone down for fossil fuels because the supply of renewable energy has gone up. So people don't need the fossil fuels as much. The problem here is the fixed costs of the fossil fuels stay the same, but they are selling less of them. And that means that the only way they can stay alive in terms of economically is to increase costs. And that is something that I believe will happen all over the world in coming years and decades. Okay, we have an article from Renews, pretty picture from, if you like red, from Unsplash of offshore wind power. The title of the article is Danske Commodities Inc.'s 1.4 gigawatt Baltic deal. Now, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing these things wrong, but it's the best I can do. Danske Commodities has signed balancing agreements for the 720 megawatt Baltic 2 and the 720 megawatt Baltic 3 Polish offshore wind projects. The energy trading outfit will offtake 100% from the arrays, totaling 1.4 gigawatts. I believe it's actually 1.44 gigawatts, making this the biggest renewables deal in the history of the company. Well, Yeah, this is a big deal. And it's happening with Poland, which has not had a lot of offshore wind power. I'm going to keep going because I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and if I don't, I'll be behind schedule. So the next, whoops, wrong one. There we go. The next item we've got from Renewable Energy Magazine, this is not a big project, but in a sense it is. Adapture Renewables 14.6 megawatt solar project operating commercially in Virginia. Utility scale solar and energy storage project developer, owner, and operator Adapture Renewables announced the completion and start of operations of the Rivanna Solar, a 14.6 megawatt solar project in Charlottesville, Virginia. This is a project that, well, it's come together in Virginia. And people in that part of the country have not been, many people I should say, have not been receptive to solar energy or to batteries, things of that nature. I don't see where the batteries are in this picture. I would assume that they're not here. Okay, I'm just going to go on. That is pretty self-explanatory. I believe this is, if not the biggest, then it's going to be one of the biggest solar arrays in Virginia. We are up to Tuesday, November 26th. This is an interesting picture. I think this picture is, I think it's generated by AI. I might be wrong. It comes from Echo Energy World Image, and it just shows urban solar power. This is from Renews, and Renews gets its photographs wherever it gets its photographs. The reason I think this might be computer generated, at least in part, is the cloud formations in the distance are very distant, but they're also very low, unless they're super distant, in which case they would possibly look like that. But it looks a little bit surreal. The title of the article is Record Year Projected for U.S. Solar in 2024. The American Clean Power Association has released a report that predicts record-breaking year for the U.S. solar industry with over 32 gigawatts of new systems in 2024. The Solar Market Monitor, a market analysis of the U.S. industrial scale solar industry, was produced by S&P Global Commodity Insights. Now, what has happened here is that because of and we will talk about this in just a minute, because of the Biden administration's laws that have been passed in the last 4 years, there has been a huge increase in solar, particularly in solar production. And that will have a lasting effect. And even with Donald Trump in office, he has said that he's going to stop it, but I doubt that he will. And I'll explain that in a few minutes. Okay, we are up to a picture of an item from Nature magazine. This picture is titled Distant Wind Turbines. If you look along the horizon, you can see tiny little things. They almost look like threads or hairs or something coming up from the ground. Those are wind turbines, and by the way, they're very far away, but they're huge. The title of this is COP29 Climate Deal, Historic Breakdown or Letdown, ? Relieved COP delegates from rich countries applauded after a last-minute pledge in which rich countries will take the lead in climate finance for poor countries of at least $300 billion each year by 2035. Some low and middle income countries, such as China, will be expected to contribute. Now, this is the item that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and I had said at that time, rich countries are going to be providing for poor countries, and one of those countries that is going to be providing is China. The Chinese car market is absolutely mind-bogglingly big, and I mean, if you just think about this, BYD, which is a company based in Shenzhen, just north of Hong Kong, is producing more than, I think it's twice as many electric vehicles, including hybrids, but it's producing twice as many electric vehicles as Tesla. Tesla is not the biggest electric vehicle company in the world. The biggest is BYD. And BYD produces buses, huge numbers of buses, thousands and thousands and thousands of buses. BYD also produces a lot of other types of vehicles. The one that comes to mind most easily is that it produces the ore trucks that are used in mines. And these are really helpful because they can actually drive the ore truck into an enclosure because it's not producing any exhaust. So China can be expected to produce money to go to poorer countries. And I have a feeling that China might kind of bend the rules on that and say to some countries, we don't want to give you money, but we'll give you solar panels and things like that, so you can get an equivalent value. And of course, I don't know what that would mean, but I don't want to accuse the Chinese of cheating. So enough said on that. Too many times when you accuse people of things, it turns out that the accusation is not really true. Now, we had talked about concentrated solar thermal, and this is a more up-close picture of the tower that we looked at earlier, which was a little rectangular thing that you could barely see on the horizon. Here you're seeing a whole bunch of heliostats, which are basically just mirrors that will follow the sun, aiming the sunlight at a spot on the tower. This article comes from Renew Economy. CSIRO, CSIRO spinoff raises record amount to fund solar heat and power tech, get industry off gas. It means and get industry off gas, excuse me. A new concentrated solar thermal company spun out of Australia's National Science Agency, CSIRO, promises zero emissions, 24/7 heat, and power that is competitive with gas. FPR Energy launched after raising $15 million in venture capital. Now this is a demonstration project. It's not the final say in what the project should look like, but they're showing the project and how it works, and the things that, they're learning things about it before they build one that is big like the Ivanpah system. And this is happening in Australia, and they are talking about having the system be competitive with gas. Gas is relatively inexpensive. New gas plants produce energy, electric energy, that is inexpensive compared to nuclear. The energy might be half as much as nuclear, but it's pretty expensive compared to near-firm solar and near-firm wind, maybe twice as costly. And this system is one that uses solar power that is competitive with natural gas, which means it's not going to be quite so competitive with near-firm solar or near-firm wind. But, they have reasons for doing that. We are up to Wednesday, November 27th, which is today, Normally I'd be recording this on a Thursday. But we have a picture here of the Terre Apple solar farm. This article comes from Renews. The title is Low Carbon Commissions 73 Megawatts of Dutch PV Sites. Low Carbon is the name of an organization. Low Carbon has announced that a portfolio of 4 Dutch solar farms with a capacity of 53 megawatts, that is the total capacity, has become fully operational. The 4 assets include the 26.7 megawatt Terre Apple site with its in the province of Groningen, 1 site in the province of Overijssel, and 2 sites at Wijk bij Duurstede in the province of Utrecht. Now, I apologize for pronouncing Dutch so badly. I should pronounce Dutch better, but I really don't have a lot of energy time, I should say, to practice Dutch. But you know, this is just an indication. That's what I should say. And the picture that we're looking at here is Terre Apple Solar Farm. So this is a solar farm in Holland. And by the way, in the Netherlands, in Holland. The Netherlands is north from Germany. There are parts of Germany that are a little bit north of the Netherlands, but most of Germany is south of the Netherlands. All of Germany is farther north than all of Vermont. There isn't any part of Vermont that is farther north than any part of Germany. So this is fairly northern in its exposure, and that makes a difference. Okay, our next item is also from Renews. I just put it up. These are the foundations of offshore wind turbines, and you can see that there is a jack-up ship or a jack-up barge there, which in fact looks like it may be jacked up on its stanchions, and it is probably loading the foundations that it wants need to go out to sea. This item comes from Renews. The title is Offshore Wind Represents 21 billion pounds UK steel opportunity. Up to 25 million tons, and this is TONNES, which is approximately a metric ton. I think maybe it's exactly a metric ton, but it's considerably larger than a short ton, which is used in the United States frequently. The metric ton is, I think, 2,400 pounds, but it's 25 million tons of steel will be needed over the next 25 years for offshore wind investment around the coast of Britain, according to a report by Lumen EE for UK Steel. The single opportunity alone is worth approximately 21 billion pounds in steel purchases. Well, what does it mean to have the single opportunity alone? Okay, when they say that this is worth 21 billion pounds as a single opportunity, what they're saying basically is this investment will be needed for offshore wind farms. And it doesn't talk about other opportunities that come along. It doesn't talk about onshore wind farms, which could conceivably be just as big. So renewable energy, we're talking about, this is a part of the renewable energy, $21 billion worth of opportunity. Now, I'm going to go on. The last item on our agenda is this, which is this FRED, which you see in the upper left-hand corner, is the Federal Reserve the Federal Reserve Energy Data. I'm sorry, economic data. Federal Reserve economic data. And what you see there is a graph starting in 2000 and ending approximately at the end of 2024. And this is something that's important. This article came from Clean Technica. The title is "The Enormous Increase in U.S. Manufacturing Construction from Biden's Green New Deal Policies." The graph is overall construction spending in the manufacturing sector. Spending for new manufacturing capacity was clearly stagnant under Donald Trump's first presidency. It shot up with laws passed under Joe Biden. Trump wants to change that. Okay, I think what we can see here is a reason why Donald Trump is not going to be able to do the things that he wants to do on day one without causing his followers a huge amount of mischief. What we see here is that according to this graph, from just after 2015, which is approximately when Donald Trump took office, to 2020, and that is to say from 2016 to 2020, Donald Trump had a industrial manufacturing sector that was stagnant. Investments were flat. They were not going down, but they were not going up. And this after they had gone up under Barack Obama. You can see that there is a decline at approximately the beginning of the Obama administration. And the sector did go up during the recession, which you can see as kind of a gray bar. In other words, manufacturing investment was not a leading economic indicator, it was a following economic indicator. The thing that led the economy into the recession was problems in real estate. And the financial allocations for manufacturing were already there for the industrial sector. This indicator dropped once the effects of the recession took hold in this sector. But they started to rise again, and very clearly by the end of 2015 and into 2016, they had gone up under President Obama. Under President Trump, they stayed flat. Then Joe Biden came in. It took him a little time to do it because he had to get laws changed, but he did. And the sector took off. And people who have been complaining about the United States losing manufacturing jobs stopped talking about that because the manufacturing jobs are coming online. Now, if Donald Trump wants those jobs to be ended, he's going to have to explain to the people who voted for him, who have jobs that are good jobs, manufacturing electric vehicles, manufacturing wind turbines, manufacturing solar panels. He's going to have to explain to them why they're losing their jobs. In the meantime, there will be jobs, but the jobs that they are losing pay typically $40, $50 an hour. And the jobs that he's going to create are jobs that will be jobs that are given to illegal aliens who he wants to ship out of the country, people who are working in farm fields, and that's minimum wage. I have no idea where this is going to go, but I can guess. Anyway, there it is. I hope you have a good day, and